Hey, welcome back to Clean Cut, where we can talk about the truth about just about anything, as long as we use logic and common sense.
This season, we're looking at the miracles of Jesus to see what they can tell us about God and His promises to the faithful. Last time, we talked about the healing of deformities, how Jesus can reshape parts of someone's body to fix a deformed limb or other condition that inhibits their abilities. Today, the healing of the possessed. In a possession, a spirit enters into a person and influences their actions from the inside. The precise amount of influence it exercises, and the actions the person tends toward as a result, vary. But if others have started to notice that they're possessed, the influence of the spirit is usually quite large, and the actions the person is taking are usually quite bad. In general, possessions happen mostly to those involved in the occult, or who've been involved in the occult in the past. Spirits don't just spring into a holy person and take control of them. They generally have to be invited in by playing around with occult practices, or in rare cases, by a life of mortal sin and disrespect for God, leading to a person who can fail to take the warning signs seriously. In any case, noticeable possessions have never been as common as, for example, sickness, but Jesus had to deal with quite a few of them, and so did his disciples. Because with all the paganism at the time, there was a lot of occult practice and divination as well. And there was in their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, "What have we to do with thee, Jesus of Nazareth? Art thou come to destroy us? I know who thou art, the Holy One of God." And Jesus threatened him, saying, "Speak no more, and go out of the man." And the unclean spirit, tearing him, and crying out with a loud voice, went out of him. Mark 1:23-26. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Hold thy peace, and go out of him." And when the devil had thrown him into the midst, he went out of him, and hurt him not at all. Luke 4:35. The version of this account found in Luke makes sure to point out that Jesus prevented the demon from causing any real harm to the man he was possessing at this point. This approach of Jesus commanding the evil spirits to obey him is consistent throughout his various exorcisms, and modern-day exorcism techniques are still derived in large part from the methods that Jesus demonstrated and advocated. And his fame went throughout all Syria, and they presented to him all sick people that were taken with diverse diseases and torments, and such as were possessed by devils, and lunatics, and those that had palsy, and he cured them. Matthew 4:24. And when he was come to the multitude, there came to him a man falling down on his knees before him, saying, "Lord, have pity on my son, for he is a lunatic and suffereth much. For he falleth often into the fire, and often into the water. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him." Then Jesus answered and said, "O unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me." And Jesus rebuked him, and the devil went out of him, and the child was cured from that hour. Matthew 17:14-17. Jesus' exorcisms were very effective and drew crowds of people. He was even able to cure insanity, a largely mental condition. Then was offered to him one possessed with a devil, blind and dumb, and he healed him, so that he spoke and saw. Matthew 12:22. Some demons even inflicted bad health conditions on the people they possessed, including blindness and muteness, which faded when the demon was driven out. For a woman, as soon as she heard of him, whose daughter had an unclean spirit, came in and fell down at his feet, for the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician born, and she besought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter, who said to her, "Suffer first the children to be filled, for it is not good to take the bread of the children and cast it to the dogs." But she answered and said to him, "Yea, Lord, for the whelps also eat under the table of the crumbs of the children." And he said to her, "For this saying, go thy way, the devil is gone out of thy daughter." Mark 7:25-29. It's unclear what's meant by Syrophoenician. Some believe this refers to a mixed-race person, part Phoenician and part Syrian. Both countries were quite close to Israel and to each other. At the time, of course, the Roman occupation was preventing armed violence between different countries like these, but Israel's history with both had been a bit spotty. Phoenicia had mostly been friendly with Israel, even generous in their own way, but some of their pagan religious practices and the lure of wealth began to rub off on the people of Israel. Syria actually attacked Israel in the past, but it's unlikely that those kinds of concerns would be the reason why Jesus hesitates to cast the demon out of this woman's daughter. What Jesus does do is explain that the people of Israel take priority and compares her to a dog. However, she doesn't respond by taking offense and flying off the handle. She responds with humility, accepting his comparison, but saying that surely some of those blessings of Israel may also fall within reach of her. Jesus is pleased with the way she replied to him, most likely because of her great faith and humility, and grants her wish, casting out the demon from probably quite some distance away. There's one more possession of special note, and it's described in all of the first 3 Gospels. And when he was come forth to the land, there met him a certain man, who had a devil now a very long time, and he wore no clothes, neither did he abide in a house, but in the sepulchres. Luke 8:27. A possessed man appeared, who just runs around naked and sleeps in tombs like a vampire. And when he saw Jesus, he fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, What have I to do with thee, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beseech thee, do not torment me. For he commanded the unclean spirit to go out of the man. For many times it seized him, and he was bound with chains, and kept in fetters, and breaking the bonds, he was driven by the devil into the deserts. Luke 8:28-29. This man's possession was so severe that he couldn't be held or imprisoned, even by strong chains, but the demon was afraid of being forced back to hell. Hell is a place of great suffering, even for demons. And Jesus asked him, saying, What is thy name? But he said, Legion, because many devils were entered into him, and they besought him that he would not command them to go into the abyss. Luke 8:30-31. Learning the name of an evil spirit that is to be forced out seems to be of some use to Jesus, but it's important to understand that even this is in response to a command, and done in the context of a confrontation with evil. Jesus didn't hold discussions with demons, and neither should we. And there was there a herd of many swine feeding on the mountain, and they besought him that he would suffer them to enter into them, and he suffered them. The devils therefore went out of the man and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake, and were stifled. Luke 8:32-33. The demons can only do what Jesus permits them to do, and in general, God keeps demons on a very short leash. These demons are allowed to possess pigs instead of a person, because pigs are worth less than a person is. Once, when the disciples failed to carry out a certain exorcism, and asked Jesus for tips on how to accomplish it, he told them that prayer and fasting were the only way. To this day, exorcisms still involve prayers for liberation from evil, and voluntary sacrifices, including fasting, are also considered helpful. However, it's a difficult process and needs to be brought to completion once it's started, so these kinds of exorcisms should only be done by someone trained in these matters. Things didn't go well for the sons of Sceva when they tried to do an amateur exorcism in Acts 19:11-20. Jesus, of course, was eminently qualified, having supreme authority and wisdom to rely on. He had the power to command the evil spirits to leave whenever he encountered someone who was possessed. Again, this shows that the faithful can appeal to him for liberation from demonic influence, and that those in heaven are invariably free of such influence forever. Next time, raising the dead.
That's all for now, so keep asking questions, and thanks for watching.